Amy Keating-Rogers may not be one of the best writers on the show, but she has definitely produced some of the most memorable and funny moments on the show. So let's get right to it. The Ticketmaster. While I still maintain that this was not a good story for the first standalone episode in the show's history, I don't think we can hold that against Amy Keating-Rogers, so I'm just going to ignore that. I still, however, find it kind of silly the way that the main six get so worked up over tickets to a party. It just seems like such a trivial thing to be fighting over. It does cover an interesting idea, though, that of not wanting to upset any of your friends or give the impression that you favour certain friends over others. It's the same reason why I never give out Christmas cards anymore, because you are inevitably going to forget someone. And in this case, it's something Twilight didn't even ask for. She was just given 2 tickets out of the blue. To be honest though, giving the 2 tickets back seems like a pretty obvious solution to me from the start. I mean, it's a social activity. Why would Twilight only want to take one friend? Normally the idea with giving someone 2 tickets for something is so they can take their partner. But of course, Twilight doesn't have a partner, so why give her 2 tickets? I don't know, maybe Princess Celestia was thinking she wanted to take Spike. But it was kind of interesting to get more of a development of the other 5 by seeing the different reasons why they wanted to go, and the different things that they do to try and get Twilight to give them the ticket. Although I disagree with Twilight when she says that they all had good reasons to go. Pinkie, Fluttershy and Rarity clearly only wanted to go to have some fun. All in all, I liked Twilight a bit more after this episode, but I really didn't like the other 5 at all. Applebuck season. Interesting that Amy Keating-Rogers wrote not only the first single story episode in the show's history, but also the second. But anyway, this is kind of an odd episode when you watch it now. I mean, you have Big Macintosh talking in complete sentences for one thing, and Applejack acts a little out of character, not wanting her friends to help her for some reason. But I guess the idea is she doesn't fully understand her friends yet because they are still getting to know each other. Although I do find it kind of odd that she won't let any pony help her, when, under normal circumstances, she would have at least had Big Macintosh helping her. But this episode is full of some great comedy moments, either from the strange way Applejack starts acting, or from the things that go wrong due to her lack of sleep. But overall, it was not the most interesting of plots the show has ever had. Applejack just refuses help from the other 5 for a while, and eventually gives in. So, a funny episode, but not a great story to go with it. Bridle Gossip. This for me was the absolute pinnacle of Amy Keating-Rogers' comedy. Pinkie is classic Pinkie, Flutterguy's voice, Spike's nicknames for them, and let's not forget that this is the introduction of Applebloom. The banter between her and Applejack, while Applejack is small, cracks me up every time. Of course the story is pretty good too. It touches on the idea of meeting someone from another culture, who you might find a bit odd due to them having different customs, or their behaviour seeming a little strange. Then there is also the fear of strange things happening to you, and not knowing why it's happening or what you can do about it. And of course, let's not forget Zecora herself. I did feel her backstory was a little vague though. Okay, so she has this evil reputation around Ponyville. How did she get that reputation in the first place? It also annoyed me a little that everything she said was in rhyme. It was cute at first, but after a while it got a little grating. But otherwise, she was a pretty fun character to watch, and works quite well in representing African people. You could even say there's a little bit of an anti-racism message here. But maybe I'm just reading too much into it. But anyway, great episode. Definitely one of the best of Season 1. Fall Weather Friends. Now, this is what I'm talking about when it comes to a great story. The first time I watched Season 1, I kept changing my mind about who my favourite pony was, but I think I always knew what my favourite pairing was. Applejack and Rainbow Dash portrays a much more competitive type of friendship, which always has the danger of creating a bit of a rift between the two if you start taking things too seriously. Some have complained that it was clear that Rainbow was cheating during the Iron Pony contest. My response would be that firstly, the Iron Pony contest was just a contest done for fun. There weren't really any official rules. And secondly, it's possible that Rainbow didn't even realise what she was doing was unfair. She is after all a Pegasus. If the situation she is in is made easier by her using her wings, she will just naturally use them. That is the tricky thing about playing sport for fun. Sometimes overly competitive people will try to cheat, and since sport done for fun isn't officiated, there isn't really anything you can do to stop them. There is also the problem that if you become too insistent that people play fair, it removes any element of fun and becomes more about proving a point. That's what I love about how this rivalry between the two of them starts out as light-hearted fun, but as things progress it gets dead serious. This is what makes sport a very different social activity from anything else, because the people you do it with, those that share the same passion as you, are also your main obstacle, the ones trying to stop you from achieving your goal. It can be difficult at times to remain friends with those you are trying to beat, but the running of the leaves sequence is the part that basically nails the idea of sports being taken too seriously. And we get some awesome Pinky lines on top of this. Applejack stealing a cat's PJs? Classic. And at the end you have the final lesson of taking competition too seriously. That being that if you get so stressed out over trying to win, you don't even take the time to just enjoy the experience while it lasts. The fact that it touches on something so close to my heart makes this episode a personal favourite of mine. A Dog and Pony Show. This episode almost felt like two episodes in a way. First you have the story that is basically just Spike having a crush on Rarity. I mean, that's it really, he has a crush on her, the end. The other is Rarity's story of outsmarting the Diamond Dogs, and not allowing herself to be intimidated by them. This was really the episode that defined Rarity's character. I think the whole whining part might be the single funniest thing the show has ever produced. I love how it's actually a little unclear as to how much of this performance is just an act to get the dogs to let her go, and how much is her genuinely being disgusted by the dogs. A lot of this performance reminded me of the way that Jim Carrey acts in pretty much every film he's in, and it makes me wonder if that might have been Amy Keating-Rogers' inspiration when writing this scene. But I have to say, the rest of the episode isn't as good. Not to say it was bad or anything, it was nice to see Rarity and Spike spend some time alone together, but this massive focus on Spike's crush was kind of pointless. It's not like they hadn't already established that he had a crush on her. Did we really need half an episode about it? The other five and Spike going to rescue her was a nice little adventure, but it was also pointless since she didn't need rescuing in the end. But then again, I guess it does make sense that they would try and rescue her, since Spike saw her get kidnapped. There are also a few minor things that bug me, like how convenient it seemed that Twilight knew the gem-finding spell, why there are all these piles of gems buried a few inches underground, and the fact that aside from Twilight, the other five are pretty much wasted in this episode. Overall, it's an average episode that just happens to have one of the best scenes of the series. The best night ever. This was a great way to finish off the first season. It was nice to see Amy Keating-Rogers have a bit of continuity between her episodes, with this being the gala that they got tickets for in the Ticketmaster. And they also attempt to fulfill the plans that they talked about in that episode. We also got two of the best songs of Season 1. At the Gala and The Pony Pokey. This episode touches on another interesting idea. That sometimes an event or meeting you've been looking forward to for months may not live up to your expectations. It may be a very different kind of thing from what you were expecting, or there may be unforeseen circumstances that prevent you from doing what you planned. Also, this is something that they had all wanted to do for years, and now they are here and it's just not what they had hoped for. In other words, be careful what you wish for. Although I still must ask why the main six didn't try a bit harder to make the best of a bad situation. Pinky is the only one that I would say did anything to try and make the night better. I felt the sequence at the gala with them having terrible times went on a bit too long, and I found it really depressing by the end. But there was some good stuff in there too. Fluttershy and Rarity flipping out, while a little bit freaky, was still very satisfying, because I think they suffered the most. The turning of the tables Cinderella moment was also pretty funny, as well as one of the few pop culture references that I think this show's target audience would actually get. Someone pointed out to me a while back that they thought Spike was being a little selfish by just wanting the other 6 to hang out together just because he had no plans of his own. But actually, I think it was more a case of Spike just wanting to take in the experience of the gala and take everything as it came, while the main 6 were in a rush to do specific things and didn't take the time to just enjoy the moment. The ending, especially for a series finale, could have been a bit more satisfying, but it was a nice message nonetheless. When it comes to doing stuff with your friends, the important thing isn't so much what you do, but that you actually do it together. The cutie pox. I don't really have much to say about this one. The basic setup feels a bit too similar to Call of the Cutie if you ask me. I mean, Apple Bloom learnt in that episode that she shouldn't try to force her cutie mark to come before its time, and yet that seems to be all she's doing throughout this episode. Now, I like the idea of her actually getting her cutie mark, and maybe finding it's not really all that great. Again, the sort of be careful what you wish for story. But no, as it turns out, having her cutie mark was as great as she anticipated. It's only when it turns out to be cutie pox that problems arise. This episode did have a few funny moments. The Big Lebowski reference, Applejack's line, "My sister speaking in fancy," Spike having a "I really like her mane" moment, and all the different talents Apple Bloom is forced to do. But that's really all I've got to say about this one. It's not bad, but nothing special either. The last roundup. Derpy had a speaking role in this one, and they changed her voice later. Okay, so now we got that out of the way, let's get to the episode. For Applejack's first episode of Season 2, it was odd that it wasn't really about her. It was really more about what her friends think of her compared to what Applejack thinks her friends think of her. That and the burden of pressure. But as that kind of story goes, it's not bad. It's a lot like Applebuck Season, another Amy Keating Rogers episode, in that it's about Applejack stubbornly refusing to let her friends help her. But here it actually makes a lot more sense that she wouldn't want her friends to help her, as it involves admitting to them that she has failed. Some people seem to have an issue with Applejack lying when she is meant to be the element of honesty. For me, that's just another case of lack of continuity, and you are really just beating a dead horse by complaining about stuff like that now. I would say, though, that Applejack did break her pinky promise. Regardless of her being at breakfast or not, she did say she was going to tell them what happened, and she didn't. The other major issue people seem to have is the mayor's attitude towards Applejack, putting unnecessary pressure on her to earn a lot of money. I actually kind of liked that. It makes Applejack being ashamed of not winning anything more understandable. And it's not like the mayor is Applejack's friend or anything. If one of the other 5 had done this, I'd have been pretty pissed off. But for the mayor to do this seems fairly in character for her. It was also nice to see another episode take place mostly outside of Ponyville. We also get some great Pinky being Pinky. I think at least one scene of stuff like that should be mandatory for every episode. We also get a good chase scene as the climax. Although, while I understand Applejack wanting to find another way to earn the money that everyone was expecting, I do kind of question why she would go to such lengths to cover up not doing well at the competition. I mean, I know she has a bit of a pride issue, but running away is a bit ridiculous. Also, wouldn't the Apple's business take a bit of a hit if she's not there to help? Overall, this episode has some great moments, and a fairly solid story too. Nothing special, but not bad either. A friend indeed. I've already talked about the song, which is by far the best song this show has had to date. The episode as a whole, however, was kind of underwhelming. Not to say it was bad, but I don't know, it just didn't feel like it was as good as it could have been. I think it was mainly that the Pinky being Pinky stuff wasn't as enjoyable. I'm not sure if Pinky works as well as a main character. Her antics seem a bit more in place when she's just a supporting character. That and the story of a young, overly happy person trying to cheer up a grumpy old man has been done quite a lot before. But there were some enjoyable parts to this one. The felt animation was cool, Derpy's appearance was interesting, and we actually get some continuity here. Some people seem to have an issue with the ending, that by eventually winning Cranky over, the episode is sending the message that you can just force your friendship onto anyone. I didn't really see it that way myself. I think the message was more that you can make anyone your friend if you appeal to their better nature, and you just try hard enough with them. I don't really see how Pinky is forcing her friendship either. Heck, she was all ready to give up on Cranky until Matilda showed up. If it hadn't been for Matilda, she probably would have just conceded that Cranky didn't want to be her friend. All in all, this episode is worth seeing just for a few great moments and the song, but not one of Amy Keating Rogers' best. Mystery on the Friendship Express. I loved this one. This really had some of the best Pinky moments of any episode, and it's also the kind of story that always fascinates me. The mystery, where we, the audience, are actually kept guessing right up until the end. We also get some great homages to silent movies, Sherlock Holmes, James Bond, and samurai films. By the way, anyone that says that this is a reference to Kill Bill clearly doesn't understand the kind of movie that Kill Bill is. I actually really liked the way that Pinky is the one that jumps to conclusions, and Twilight is the one that looks for clues. Very in character for both of them. Some people seem to have an issue with the fact that we are not let in on the clues that Twilight finds, making it harder for us to figure out what's going on. Personally, that's what I liked about it. It kept you guessing. And it's not like there weren't clues for us to figure out, like the eyelash on the painting, Rarity's hair, and just the strange things that Pinky witnesses during the night. Some people seem to have an issue with the fact that Fluttershy, Rarity and Rainbow Dash were the ones that did it. I've even heard one suggestion that it should have been the conductor, since he didn't have anything to do with the contest and we knew nothing about him. That's exactly why it shouldn't have been him. Since we know nothing about him, it wouldn't mean anything if he were the one that did it. This is the mistake that the writers of Scooby-Doo made in pretty much every episode. It was always the one character we met right at the start, had like 2 lines and we found out almost nothing about. This meant that it made it pretty much impossible to figure out their motives for them doing whatever it was that they did, and it didn't actually mean anything at the end. In this episode, it is actually somewhat possible to figure out that Fluttershy, Rarity and Rainbow Dash did it, because of what we know about them. Rainbow Dash can be a bit rebellious at times, Rarity can deceive. Fluttershy is a little harder to figure out, but then again she does have this more complex split personality, so maybe this is a similar thing to her flipping out in The Best Night Ever. One criticism I hear a lot that I agree with is the ending. We really didn't need a moral at the end. Although I thought the combined cake looked pretty cool. I also agree that Applejack was completely wasted in this episode. But the big issue everyone seems to have with this episode is that the 3 of them get away with it at the end. Some of you seem to think that if you take a few bites out of a cake, just apologising for it isn't good enough. Well, first of all, I think you are forgetting that Pinky is a friend, and as a friend, she should forgive him. There is a famous line from a film, "Love means never having to say you're sorry." Well, in this case, I think friendship also means never having to say you're sorry. Another thing I keep hearing is, "Oh, but what about the cakes? They put so much work into that cake, it could be a big part of their business, and now they've lost it because of them." Well, first of all, I'd like to point out that they never actually say it's a big part of their business. All they really say in the episode is that they put a lot of work into the cake. But let's assume for the sake of argument that it is, and that the cakes are losing a massive part of their business because of the cake being defaced like this. Just because we only see them apologise in the episode, doesn't mean that that's all they did. If you cause something bad to happen, the first thing you should do is apologise. If there are other things that you can do to further rectify the situation, then you should do them. If you don't do them, then that's proof that you are not actually sorry for what you've caused. Who's to say the 3 of them didn't also go and apologise to the cakes, and maybe pay for a replacement cake? But at this point you're probably just going to tell me that I'm speculating, that I have no way of knowing that that's what actually happened. Well, conversely, you have no way of knowing that that isn't what happened. So it's pointless debating stuff like this, really. But I'll just leave you with one last thing to think about. If you still don't think that the 3 of them should have gotten away with taking a few bites out of a cake, even though they apologised for it, how come you all seem okay with Spike's actions in Secret of My Excess? I mean, he destroyed Ponyville, kidnapped Rarity, and almost got himself and Rarity killed, and he didn't even apologise for it at the end. So overall, Amy Keating Rogers doesn't write some of the deepest, almost thought-provoking stories that the show has had. But even when her stories aren't the best, they are still a lot of fun and normally pretty funny. I think the real key to her writing is that she keeps her stories fairly simple and makes it more about the episode being enjoyable. That's why the Ticketmaster and parts of The Best Night Ever didn't work for me. They weren't enjoyable enough. It's also why I don't really understand the criticism of Mystery on the Friendship Express. Amy Keating Rogers' real strength seems to be when she writes the main six as a group. This does, however, expose a couple of possible weaknesses in her writing as well. Maybe the reason she doesn't write particularly deep stories is because she doesn't really know how to write them. And maybe the reason she tends to write the main six more as a group is because she doesn't really know how to write them as individuals. She keeps her stories fairly simple and doesn't seem to want to take any risks with her writing, or try anything particularly ambitious. Like, maybe it would have been interesting if Cranky had still hated Pinky at the end of A Friend Indeed. I'm not saying that the ending of A Friend Indeed was bad or anything, but it would have been a bit more ambitious to maybe try that different kind of ending. There is also times when she does seem to force all of the main six into a story. I like the idea of the main six all being together in one episode, but I kind of feel at times that if you're going to force them into a group, they need to all do things together, and there are times in Amy Keating Rogers' episodes where they seem a bit wasted. Applejack in Mystery and the Friendship Express, for example. So I'd have to say that she probably isn't as talented as some of the other pony writers, like M.A. Larson or Cindy Morrow. But let's be fair to her. She's sticking to what she knows, and for what she actually does try to do, she does it very well. In that sense, she's kind of like the Avengers Assembled of the My Little Pony writers. That movie may have not tried anything new or anything particularly ambitious, but for what it tried to do, it did it brilliantly. For the type of writer Amy Keating Rogers is, she's very good. I also get the feeling she'd be quite good at writing the stories to video games. I don't know why, it just feels like her writing fits to that kind of thing. I don't know if Fighting is Magic is going to have a storyline, but if it does, maybe she should help write it. Well, that's it guys, I've talked about all the My Little Pony writers I feel I have enough to say about right now. I hope you enjoyed the series and I'll see you again soon.